Trump's Canada tariffs blocked in House vote by his own party members. 6 Republicans walked onto the House floor and voted against their own president, against House leadership, against the single most important piece of Donald Trump's economic agenda. They joined Democrats to pass a resolution terminating Trump's tariffs on Canada, 219 to 211. That vote was not supposed to happen. House leadership had spent months blocking it. Trump posted a threat while the vote was happening. Any Republican who votes against tariffs will seriously suffer the consequences come election time, and that includes primaries. 6 Republicans voted anyway. They knew what the threat meant. They voted to end the tariffs anyway. This was not a symbolic gesture. This was the first time the House of Representatives formally rejected Trump's trade war. The first time Republicans broke with their president on the centerpiece of his second term. And the reason they did it tells you everything about what Trump's Canada tariffs have actually done to American workers, American farmers, and American businesses. Today, we are showing you who these 6 Republicans are, why they defied Trump, what their constituents told them that made them willing to face a primary challenge, and why this vote, even though Trump can veto, it marks the moment Trump's tariff strategy lost the support of his own party. But before we dive into this story, if you appreciate in-depth analysis like this, hit that like button and subscribe to stay informed on the stories that truly matter. So, how it started? The path to Wednesday's vote began months ago. Democrats filed a privileged resolution to terminate Trump's national emergency declaration on Canada, the legal mechanism he used to impose tariffs without congressional approval. Privileged resolutions are special. Any member can force a floor vote. Leadership cannot block them. House Republican leadership saw the problem immediately. If that vote reached the floor, Republicans would be forced to choose between loyalty to Trump and the economic interests of their districts. So leadership created a rule that blocked the House from considering any tariff termination resolutions. The rule passed, the vote was stopped. But rules expire, and when this one came up for renewal, 3 Republicans refused to extend it. Thomas Massie, Don Bacon, and Kevin Kiley voted with Democrats to kill the rule. The dam broke. Democrats immediately forced the Canada tariff vote, and 6 Republicans crossed over. Speaker Mike Johnson called the vote a fruitless exercise, said he was disappointed in the result, but Trump has veto power, and there is not a 2/3 majority to override, so it will not change policy. That framing misses the point entirely. The vote was not fruitless. It was a message from farmers, from manufacturers, from constituents who spent a year watching prices climb and export markets disappear. And it was delivered by Republicans who decided that facing a Trump primary challenge was less dangerous than facing voters who were being crushed by the tariffs. So who are these 6 who said no? Don Bacon represents Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, Omaha, agricultural country. His farmers told him the tariffs were killing them, not metaphorically, financially. Canadian retaliatory tariffs hit American agricultural products, input costs for equipment and fertilizer climbed, export markets closed. Bacon said tariffs have been a net negative for the economy and are a significant tax that American consumers, manufacturers, and farmers are paying. He voted to end them. Jeff Hurd represents Colorado's 3rd district, Western Colorado. Agricultural producers and manufacturers across his district told him the same story. Tariffs are not good for Colorado's 3rd district. Hurd also cited constitutional authority. Tariff power resides with Congress, not the president. He voted to restore congressional control. Dan Newhouse represents Washington's 4th district, Eastern Washington, wine country, beer producers, agricultural exporters. His statement after the vote was specific. Washington state's economy is heavily intertwined with that of our neighbors to the north. Canada is a major trading partner. Agricultural producers' input and equipment prices have continued to climb. Canada's reciprocal tariffs have harmed our state's beer, wine, and spirits industry. Newhouse argued Congress should not tie its own hands on constitutional authority to levy tariffs. He voted to reassert that authority. Thomas Massie represents Kentucky's 4th district, Northern Kentucky. Massie has been the most vocal Republican opponent of Trump's tariff strategy from the beginning. He argued the tariffs are taxes on American consumers and violate constitutional principles of congressional control over trade policy. He voted against extending the rule that blocked tariff votes. Then he voted to terminate the Canada tariffs. Kevin Kiley represents California's 3rd District, Northern California suburbs and rural areas. Kiley told CBS News after the Tuesday vote that leadership's attempt to block tariff votes was taking power away from members. He called it a big problem. Article 1 of the Constitution gives tariff authority to Congress. Kiley said it is important in the system of checks and balances that the House protects the powers that belong to its branch of government. He voted to reclaim that power. Brian Fitzpatrick represents Pennsylvania's 1st District, Bucks County, suburban Philadelphia. Fitzpatrick has a history of supporting bipartisan legislation. He has voted with Democrats on congressional stock trading bans and healthcare subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. His vote against the Canada tariffs fit that pattern. He joined Democrats without issuing a lengthy public explanation. The vote spoke for itself. There is another dimension to this vote that most coverage is missing. 3 of the 6 Republicans who voted against the tariffs explicitly cited constitutional grounds. Jeff Hurd said tariff authority resides with Congress. Dan Newhouse said Congress should not tie its own hands on constitutional authority to levy tariffs. Kevin Kiley argued that Article 1 gives this power to the House, and protecting congressional powers is important in the system of checks and balances. This is not abstract legal theory. It is about how Trump imposed these tariffs in the first place. He did not ask Congress for permission. He declared a national emergency under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That law gives the president extraordinary authority to regulate commerce during national emergencies. Trump claimed the flow of fentanyl from Canada constituted a national emergency, threatening the United States. Then he used that emergency declaration to impose tariffs without a congressional vote. The problem is that fentanyl is not actually flowing from Canada in quantities that justify a national emergency. The vast majority of fentanyl enters the United States through the southern border, not the northern border. Trump's emergency declaration was a legal fiction designed to bypass Congress, and it worked until Wednesday. When Republicans vote to terminate the national emergency, they are not just opposing tariffs, they are reasserting congressional authority over trade policy. They are saying the president cannot invent an emergency to seize powers that the Constitution gives to Congress. That argument resonates with constitutional conservatives who spent years criticizing President Obama for executive overreach. Now, they are facing the same issue with a Republican president. And some of them are choosing the Constitution over party loyalty. The story behind these 6 votes is not only about constitutional principle, it is also about economics. Farmers, manufacturers, and business owners in these districts spent months calling their representatives with the same message: the tariffs are not working. They are not bringing jobs back. They are not protecting American industry. They are raising costs, closing export markets, and destroying businesses that depend on trade with Canada. Bacon said his constituents do not have an extra $1,700 to spare. That number came from economic analyses showing that tariffs have cost the average American family roughly $1,700 per year in higher prices. Groceries, building materials, cars. The cost increases showed up everywhere. And constituents blamed the tariffs. The Congressional Budget Office released a report showing that tariffs are expected to reduce deficits by over $3 trillion over a decade. That sounds positive until you read the next line. Companies are passing off 90% of those costs to consumers. American families are paying the tariff bill, not foreign exporters, not Canadian companies. American shoppers at American grocery stores buying American products that use Canadian inputs. Gregory Meeks, the Democrat who sponsored the resolution, said exports to Canada have fallen more than 21% since the tariffs were imposed. 21%. That is not a minor adjustment. That is billions of dollars in lost sales. American companies that sold products to Canadian buyers watched those markets disappear as Canada imposed retaliatory tariffs. Every retaliatory measure closed another revenue stream. Agricultural exporters were hit particularly hard. Canada targeted American farm products deliberately: wheat, beef, dairy, pork. Products from states that voted for Trump. The Labor Department released revised employment data showing the economy added only 15,000 jobs per month on average in 2025. The original estimates were nearly 900,000 jobs higher before the revision. That revision happened because the tariff-driven economic uncertainty was depressing hiring. Employers do not add jobs when they cannot predict costs 6 months out. Wells Fargo economist Sarah House said there are not as many job openings as there used to be. Workers do not have the bargaining power they previously had to command higher wages. The tariffs created economic stagnation, disguised as stability. The business community told Republicans the same story. Economic uncertainty created by the tariff war was preventing investment. Companies did not know whether to build new facilities or hire workers because they could not predict what trade policy would look like in 6 months. Republicans from districts with significant trade exposure to Canada heard this message constantly. Town halls, constituent calls, Chamber of Commerce meetings, end the tariffs or we will find someone who will. Wednesday's House vote was not the first time Republicans broke with Trump on Canada tariffs. The Senate passed a similar resolution last April. 4 Republicans joined all Democrats: Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, Rand Paul of Kentucky, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. McConnell's vote was particularly significant. The Senate Republican leader had spent decades supporting free trade and opposing tariffs. He called Trump's tariff strategy economically damaging and constitutionally questionable. McConnell rarely breaks with Republican presidents publicly. His vote signaled that opposition to the tariffs ran deeper in the Senate GOP than most people realized. The Senate resolution passed with a simple majority. The House resolution will go to the Senate next. It is expected to pass again. Trump's Truth Social post during the vote was designed to intimidate. Any Republican who votes against tariffs will seriously suffer the consequences come election time, and that includes primaries. 6 Republicans looked at that threat and voted against the tariffs anyway. That decision reveals something important about where Trump's political power actually is. These members calculated that a Trump-backed primary challenger was a smaller threat than angry constituents crushed by tariff costs. That calculation would not have made sense 2 years ago. But the political environment has shifted. Inflation is still elevated. Economic growth is sluggish. The job market is softening. Republicans in swing districts are now more afraid of general election voters than Trump primarying them. That is a fundamental shift in the party's power dynamics. Bacon said earlier in the day that as many as 30 Republicans might vote to terminate the tariffs. The final number was 6. Leadership and the White House mounted an aggressive pressure campaign. It worked on most Republicans, but it did not work on everyone. And that is the story. Speaker Johnson is technically correct. The resolution will not change policy. Trump will veto it. But Johnson's framing misses what actually happened. The House, controlled by Trump's own party, formally rejected the trade policy Trump calls the cornerstone of his economic agenda. That has never happened before. Not on immigration, not on taxes. Not on any issue. Republicans fell in line until now. Democrats have unlocked the procedural mechanism to force tariff votes. They are planning votes on Trump's tariffs on Mexico and his Liberation Day tariffs. Every vote will force more Republicans to choose between Trump and their districts. Every vote will produce more defections. The vote also changes trade negotiations. Canada and Mexico now know Trump's tariff threats lack unanimous support in his own party. That weakens his negotiating position. Republican pressure to end tariffs will grow. The longer they stay, the more Republicans will break ranks. From Ottawa's perspective, Wednesday's vote is validation. Mark Carney has spent a year arguing that Trump's tariff strategy would eventually collapse under its own contradictions. That American businesses, farmers, and workers would turn against the tariffs once the costs became clear. That Republicans in competitive districts would face a choice between loyalty to Trump and loyalty to their constituents. Wednesday's vote proved Carney right. Not completely. 6 Republicans is not a majority. But 6 Republicans breaking with Trump on his signature economic policy is 6 more than anyone expected a year ago. And the direction matters more than the current count. Canada's strategy since the tariffs began has been to absorb the economic pain, impose targeted retaliation, and wait for American political support for the tariffs to erode. The retaliatory tariffs targeted products from states and districts that voted for Trump. Canadian consumers boycotted American goods. Canadian businesses shifted supply chains away from American suppliers. Every move was designed to create political pressure inside the United States to end the trade war. Wednesday's vote is evidence that strategy is working. The pressure is building. Republicans are starting to break. And the longer the tariffs remain in place, the more pressure accumulates. Carney does not need the House to override Trump's veto. He just needs Republicans to keep defecting, because every defection weakens Trump's position in the trade negotiations that are coming later this year. The United States-Mexico-Canada agreement comes up for review later in 2026. That is where this trade war gets resolved or escalates further. And Canada is walking into those negotiations with proof that Trump's own party is turning against him on tariffs. The House resolution now goes to the Senate. It will pass. 4 Republican senators voted for a similar resolution last year. McConnell, Paul, Collins, and Murkowski are all expected to vote the same way again. The resolution only needs a simple majority in the Senate. It will get one. Then it goes to Trump's desk. He will veto it. The White House has already made that clear. Trump sees the Canada tariffs as non-negotiable. They are the foundation of his trade strategy. If he backs down on Canada, every other country will demand the same treatment, so he will veto. The House will then vote on whether to override the veto. That requires a 2/3 majority. The House does not have it. Wednesday's vote was 219 to 211. Nowhere close to 2/3. The override will fail. The tariffs will remain in place. But here is what changes. Democrats now have a template. They forced one tariff vote. They will force more. Gregory Meeks said he plans to force a vote on overturning Trump's tariffs on Mexico. Other Democrats are preparing resolutions on the Liberation Day tariffs that hit Europe, Asia, and Latin America simultaneously. Every vote will force Republicans to choose. Every vote will produce more defections. Every vote will weaken Trump's political position, even if the policy does not change. And every vote gives cover to Republicans who are facing angry constituents. They can say they tried, they voted against the tariffs, Trump vetoed, not their fault. That political cover matters in an election year. It matters even more in swing districts where voters are blaming Republicans for high prices. The political pressure is only moving in one direction. More Republicans will break with Trump on tariffs, not fewer, because the economic damage is not going away. Prices are not coming down. Export markets are not reopening, and voters are not forgetting who imposed these tariffs in the first place. That is leverage, and Canada knows how to use it.